What's up, guys? Neil Orfield here, and I'm going to show you how I'll be setting up my fantasy cruncher for tonight's single game slate between the Packers and the Rams. I'll be setting up for the largest field GPP on DraftKings. While you're coming in, please hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. All right, first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to set the columns up the way I want them. I've got a quick view saved. And what I want to see in the middle of the screen is ownership projections, my projection, my exposure cap, and then how much I get of players once I have run a crunch. All right, now I'm going to sort by projection and just remove every player from my player pool who has a projection of 0. So scrolling down to those players with a projection of 0. And now I'm just going to click and drag down to remove these players from the player pool. This is going to save me some time when I'm setting up groups later. These players won't be in the player pool in the groups. So I'll save some time. I won't have to sift through them. I also just saw news that Sammy Watkins is going to be waived, so I can give him a projection of 0 as well. All right. Next, I'm going to go into the captain tab, and I'm going to set an exposure cap. And again, there's nothing magic about this number, but I usually start with 20% and then adjust on some slates. 20% seems fine on this slate. So now I can have no more than 20% of any player in the captain spot. I think this looks like a slate where there are a number of viable caption options. I think 20% is a fine number here. All right, now I'm going to go into advanced options. And I'll be working in 2 tabs here, the general tab and the groups tab. Starting here in the general tab, unique players per lineup, I'm going to leave at 1 for a 150 set. If I were doing 40 or fewer lineups, I would set this to 2 so that, just to diversify my lineup set a little bit. So none of my lineups can be, all of my lineups have to be at least 2 players different from each other if I set this at 2, which is what I would do. Again, if I were making 40 or fewer lineups, but in a 150 set, I'm going to leave it at 1. Salary cap, I'm not going to set a minimum. I will set a maximum just for the purpose of avoiding being duplicated a ton. I don't mind if I'm duplicated 5 to 10 times, but generally, if I'm lucky enough to win, I want to win a lot of money. And the best way to do that is to avoid duplication. And one of the easiest ways to avoid the most duplicated lineups is to leave some salary on the table. So I'm going to set this at $49,000, leave $1,000 on the table. Offensive players versus defense, the default is set to a max of 2 players. I'm going to change this to a max of 5 players. So I could theoretically have 5 players from one team against the defense of the opposing team. Not something that's going to come up in my lineups very often, not something that wins very often, but also something that the field doesn't love to do. So I'm going to allow that in my lineup set. Global exposure cap, I'm going to leave at 100%. You saw I already set a cap on the captain spot of 20%, but for the rest, I'm going to leave at 100% in the util. Randomness, it's all about how much control you want over your lineups. I'm going to set randomness at 30%. The more control you want over your lineups, the lower you set your randomness. I think 30% is generally a good starting place. Minimum projection included in calculation. Default is set to 3. I'm going to leave it at 3. If there's a player I want in my player pool who projects for fewer than 3 fantasy points, I'm just going to give them a manual boost to be above 3 fantasy point projection. And then players from each team max, the default is set to 5. I'm going to leave it at 5. So again, I can have 5 players from one team against just one of the opposing team. All right, that's everything I do in the general tab. Moving over to the groups tab. Guys, we have a great offer for new users only. You can get full access to everything Stokastic has to offer for NFL for 3 days free. Projections, ownership, 1v1 tools, lineup generator, top stacks tool, 0 risk because it's all free. So sign up now. The link is in the description of this video. Note that Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and is not included in this offer. All right, so I'm going to make a group. First, Aaron Rodgers in the captain spot. Here, I'll name the group right away. Find Aaron Rodgers down here in the captain spot. Now I'm going to make him my key player. Then I'll sort by position. And now I'm going to add all of these Packers pass catchers to the secondary group. And I'm going to include the running backs here Aaron Jones already has 58 targets this year. A.J. Dillon has 30. Pretty involved in the passing game. All right. Aaron Rodgers has not shown a ton of rushing upside, rushes for fewer than 10 yards per game. I don't believe he has any rushing touchdowns yet this year. I think that there are two options really with Aaron Rodgers in the captain spot. You can either change this to say use at least two players from this group when you have Rodgers at captain, or do what I'm going to do, I think, which is just leave this at one. So I'm requiring one of these pass catchers in lineups with Rodgers at captain, but then I'm going to give boosts to his pass catchers to make it more likely that I get to multiple. So I'm going to start by giving everybody a 12% boost. Except for the running backs, give a little bit of a smaller boost, just 4% boost there. All right, that'll do it for my Rodgers group. Next, I'm going to make a Baker Mayfield group. All right, so finding Baker in the captain spot, make him my key player. And then same thought, just going to add all of these Rams pass catchers to the secondary group. Yeah, and actually you don't really need to add the running backs. You could. Maybe Mayfield has different tendencies than past Rams quarterbacks, but in general, these guys have not been extremely involved in the passing game. Cam Akers only I guess single-digit targets on the year. Kieran Williams actually has been targeted a bit more relative to how much he's played, so maybe he's a better play to pair with Mayfield. It's debatable whether you really want to include these running backs. They're not like the Packers where they're very involved in the passing game. But I'm going to, I guess, include them for this video. Similar to Rodgers, I think Mayfield, if you have him in the captain spot, you want at least one pass catcher with him. I don't think you necessarily need to have two in every single lineup. I think I might be okay with some with just one. Mayfield, again, doesn't have a ton of rushing upside, a little bit more than Rodgers. But, you can always spike have a touchdown in the running game and possibly be the optimal captain without bringing along multiple pass catchers. But I think generally he's probably going to bring along at least one if he's in the captain spot. So I'm going to keep this as it is, require at least one player from this group, and then once again, give little boost to all of the pass catchers in lineups where I've got Mayfield in the captain spot. For running backs, I included them here. I don't think I'm going to give them any kind of boost. They're just not that involved in the passing game. I'm thinking about whether I should just remove them from the group. I'll see how many I get. If I get just a few, then I'd probably be okay with it. All right. Now I'm going to create a Rodgers in the flex group. So I'm finding Aaron Rodgers in the flex, making my key player. Same process as before, adding all of these Packers receivers to the secondary group. Again, including the running backs. And now I'm also going to add those Packers pass catchers in the captain spot to that secondary group. Because now I've got Rodgers in the flex, so you can play him with some pass catchers in the captain spot. Okay, looks good. I'm not going to do anything else to this group. All I'm saying with this group is if I've got Aaron Rodgers in the flex, I want at least one pass catcher from the Packers somewhere in my lineup. That's all I'm doing. I'm not giving any boost or anything like that, just requiring at least one pass catcher. And then I'll do the same thing with Baker. All right, finding Baker in the flex, making my key player. And now I'll add all of these Rams pass catchers to a secondary group. And I think for this one, I'm actually going to leave out the running backs because I'm not giving any boosts or anything. Yeah, I'm just going to leave them out. Maybe Kieran Williams I should think about including here. Yeah, maybe I'll include him. Okay. And that'll do it for that group. I'm not doing anything else. I'm just saying include at least one of these pass catchers in every lineup where I've got Baker in the flex. All right, so that'll do it for the groups. Guys, we have a great offer for new users only. You can get full access to everything Stokastic has to offer for NFL for 3 days free. Projections, ownership, 1v1 tools, lineup generator, top stacks tool, zero risk because it's all free. So sign up now. The link is in the description of this video. Note that Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and is not included in this offer. And then the only other thing I do, so I'm going to crunch out 150 lineups using my projections. All right, so you can see. So now the two things I do after I've crunched out lineups, I look at the lineups themselves, see if they correlate well enough for me that I think that it's plausible that they win. And then I look through my players individually. I go through position by position to look at the exposure I got to different players, and I adjust according to what I see here. So just looking at the lineups, starting with the first one, Rodgers at captain has 3 different pass catching options, 1 receiver and then 2 running backs. I'm totally fine with this lineup. And it is a 5-1 against the Rams defense. I wonder if we're going to see that more in this game just because the Rams don't project all that well. But pretty interesting to see that right away where we've got the 5-1 with 5 Packers versus the Rams defense. Again, this is a lineup. Nobody's going to want to play this lineup, right? It's a full-on Packers onslaught and then the Rams defense on the other side. It seems counterintuitive because generally if the Packers are doing really well, that hurts the Rams defense. But there are ways for this to work out. Obviously, if the Rams get a pick six, that's the easiest way if they score a defensive touchdown. But even if they don't, say the Packers score, 3 touchdowns and the Rams have 4 sacks and an interception at some point in the game, and the Rams offense doesn't do much, this lineup could win. It could be the Rams defense could be their best point per dollar play. So I think it's a plausible lineup. Not maybe the most likely lineup to win, but also not going to be very duplicated, and it's going to project pretty well. Second lineup, we've got Aaron Rodgers in there again with multiple pass catching options. I think that's fine. Again, I don't want to see all Packers onslaughts, so we'll see after I look at my exposures. I'm probably not going to see quite so many 5-1 Packers onslaughts, but that's what we're seeing early on here. This one, no quarterbacks, so you need to correlate. Looks fine for me. Looks like I'm getting the a ton of these Packers running backs in all of my lineups. That's pretty interesting. All right, here's again Aaron Rodgers with several pass catchers. Again, individually, these lineups all look okay to me. They all look plausible to win, but they also all look pretty similar to me. Where they're Packers onslaughts, they include both the running backs and a lot of them have Aaron Rodgers. I don't know that I want to have that many of that construction where they all look so similar. All right, here, this is interesting. We've got the Rams defense in the captain spot and then the Packers onslaught. Probably not going to group it out, but it could win. It's also pretty unlikely to win. This is obviously the scenario where, say, the Rams get a couple defensive touchdowns, and then the Packers are playing from behind and passing the ball a lot in the second half. This lineup, could certainly work out. All right. So in general, these lineups look plausible, but not necessarily high likelihood of being optimal. Like individually, I think they all look fine, but then as a group, I'm a little bit concerned that I'm getting too much of the same types of lineups. So I'm going to look through now before I adjust anything in terms of correlations. I'm just going to look at my actual player exposures, and you can see right away I'm getting to 60% Aaron Rodgers, 20% Baker Mayfield. Maybe I want a little bit more Baker in there. And I always want to note here that this isn't something, what I'm doing right now in terms of changing these projections and stuff. I'm just trying to show you my process. This isn't really like the boosts that I'm making right now are not going to be my final boosts. I'm going to make those after inactives come out once I know exactly what to expect from the game, or sorry, once I know who's going to be available in the game, and I've done a little bit more research. I haven't really done all of that research yet. So this is just the purpose of this video is setting up my fantasy cruncher, showing you my process, but not necessarily making final decisions. So generally, this is what I do. Just looking through position by position. All right, getting to a ton of Aaron Jones, not getting to much Cam Akers at all. He's probably going to be pretty low owned. Packers, not the best run defense. So I actually think I'll maybe want a little bit more of these Rams running backs. Also going to give Kieran Williams a little boost here, and you can see here he's only 400 cheaper than AJ Dillon, and AJ Dillon is has more than double his projection. So it makes sense that we're not getting to any Kieran Williams when he he's so close to AJ Dillon in salary and projects so much worse. But I think that there's some chance that Kieran Williams does really well in this matchup with the Packers. So maybe I'll give him a boost as well, get him a little bit closer to AJ Dillon. I'd probably still rather have AJ Dillon in more lineups than Kieran Williams, but yeah, with this 11.5% projected ownership, he's going to be interesting at least. Malcolm Brown, not currently my player pool because he projects for fewer than 3 fantasy points. Maybe I'll give him a little bit of a boost just to get him into that player pool. Then I go to wide receiver. And I can see at the top, getting to a lot of Watson and Allen Lazard. I think Lazard is going to come in at lower ownership. He's cheaper. I probably would rather get to more Lazard. So currently I'm getting to more Watson because he projects better. I think I might try and flip it. So maybe I'll give Lazard a little bit of a boost. And you can see why I was getting so much of those constructions where I'm not getting to a ton of Rams outside of Tutu Atwell. I'm getting in 49% of lineups. But if you look at these other receivers, Van Jefferson just 7% of lineups, Brandon Powell just 9% of lineups. So it makes sense that a lot of my lineups are going to be Packers onslaughts. But I think that I've seen more of those than I want to have in my set. So I'm going to give some boost to these pass catchers from the Rams. Maybe I want Randall Cobb. Maybe he'll get a little bit of a boost. I've not accounted for Sammy Watkins being out. I haven't done a refresh on the projection since we got that news. I don't think it's going to affect anything all that much anyway. Sammy Watkins barely had a projection, but maybe we'll see a little boost for guys like Randall Cobb. Ben Skoranek. Okay, I'm getting 24% Skoranek. Plenty of Tutu. Maybe want a little bit more Brandon Powell. Give him a little boost. And Austin Trammell. Get him in the player pool. All right, I'm going to leave it at that for now. Tight ends, I'm not getting much Tyler Higbee at all. He's a little bit expensive for his role in the offense, but I think I'd still like to get more than 5% Tyler Higbee. So I'll give him a little bit of a boost. Onion as well, give him a little boost. Rather get more than 7%. And these three, Hopkins, DeGuara, Lewis, not currently in my player pool. They all project for fewer than 3 fantasy points. Maybe I'll just give them minimum 3. Fair amount of Mason Crosby, not getting too much Matt Gay. Maybe I'll give Gay a little bit of a boost. Yeah, and then defense, special teams doesn't shock me them getting to a ton of this Packers defense. They project pretty well for the price tag. Not getting too much of the Rams at all. Maybe I give them just a tiny boost to keep it close to where they are. And then crunch again. All right, so the very first lineup still getting that 5-1 Packers onslaught. The second one, though, we are seeing 3 Rams in there if you include the defense. Still getting to a lot of these Packers onslaughts, even though after those little projections boost. So maybe I'll go back and look at those players, see if I'm getting to a good amount. All right, getting to more Tyler Higbee here, so I'd like to see that. Still not getting to a ton of Van. Maybe give him a little boost. All right, still not getting to a ton of these running backs either. And Baker. All right, so Kieran Williams was the one running back that I did include here in the Baker flex group, so I got him here with Baker right away. All right, this is no longer seeing those 5-1 Packers onslaughts, which again, I should say there's nothing wrong with the Packers onslaught at all. If you want to do a 5-1 Packers onslaught, I'm not just trying to avoid that entirely. I just don't want it to be every single one of my lineups where I'm getting to 5-1 Packers onslaughts. So these ones are looking a little bit more balanced. Still getting to some Packers onslaughts, but it's more in line with what I'd like, the amount that I'm getting of them. And in general, I think that these lineups look like they correlate well enough. When I've got Rodgers in the captain spot, I'm getting multiple. Let's see what those Baker captain lineups look like. Okay, that's good. This is what I want to see. I'd rather, when I have Baker Mayfield in the captain spot, get to multiple pass catchers from the Rams, and that appears to be what I'm getting in all of these early lineups, at least. So glad to see that. You know, I allowed for just one pass catcher from the Rams when I've got Baker in the captain spot, but in general, I'd prefer multiple. So I think these lineups are looking closer to the way I want them to be. Again, I'm not going to go through my entire process here. Just wanted to show you my general process, which is I set rules related to the quarterbacks to make sure that they correlate well with wide receivers. Then I come out here, I look at the lineups, make sure that they are correlating the way I want them to. And then I look through my player exposures and I adjust according to how much I'm getting to players. Once I see how much I get after I've run a crunch, then I'll adjust projections just so a little bit at a time to get more or less of players. And I just give incremental boosts until I get to exposure levels that I like and lineups that look like they correlate well. So that's the process. Hope you can find some success tonight using this or a similar process. Good luck.